afternoon, good evening. It's early morning in South Africa, I think 8:30 a.m. and about 5:30 p.m. in Melbourne, and of course 12 noon in India. A very warm welcome to our guest today, Mr. Emmanuel Jacobo. Uh, he's been instrumental in driving some of the municipal assets programs in South Africa. And I met him during the conference in November in Canberra, IPWA conference. So at that time, I had asked him whether he would be able to give us a small presentation. And of course, we also discussed about some collaborations between Durban University of Technology and Mahe. And hopefully that will also go forward. A very warm welcome to Emmanuel, and a warm welcome to all the AMSI office bearers as well as members. Again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I will now request Colonel Sunil Yadav to introduce our guest this morning, Dr. Emmanuel. I think you are on mute, Colonel.
Oh, sorry about that. Thanks, Dr. Pai, for giving me this honor to introduce our distinct speaker, Dr. Emmanuel. And he's a leading authority in municipal governance. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Dr. Emmanuel has been instrumental in shaping the landscape of local government, finance, and asset management in South Africa. Dr. Emmanuel currently serves as the president of the Chartered Institute of Government Finance, Audit and Risk Officers, in short, CIGFARO, where he leads initiatives to enhance financial governance and accountability in the public sector. In addition, he chairs the Center for Municipal Asset Management South Africa, that is CMAM-SA, focusing on optimizing the management of municipal assets to ensure sustainable service industry. His commitment to education is evident through his role as chair of the advisory board for the Durban University of Technology, School of Public Management and Economics. Here, he collaborates with the academic leaders to align public management education with the evolving needs of the sector. As a prolific author and sought-after speaker, Dr. Emmanuel has contributed extensively to the body of knowledge on municipal finance and asset management. His publications serve as valuable resources for practitioners and scholars alike, reflecting his dedication to advancing best practices in governance. Guided by his personal motto, that is, serve people wholeheartedly, and people will elevate you to serve more people. I mean, that is his motto. So he exemplifies servant leadership. His unwavering commitment to public service continues to inspire and elevate the standards of governance within our communities. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Emmanuel Jacobo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yadav, and I'm not sure if it's Mr. or Dr. Boss now. I'm in the midst of some academias as well. I just want to appreciate this opportunity as I greet you all, especially to Prof. Pai, as he did indicate that we met up in Australia, and we are cultivating a relationship which we are hoping to take it further. And also Prof. Pai and yourself, Mr. Yadav, the way that you have read my profile, it's the first time, because usually we send through our profiles as it is, and it's usually just read as it is. but the way that you have, unpacked it and connected why one gets involved in the academic space, one gets involved in publishing. So you've been able to then provide the true doings of that, because any act can just be an action, but if there's no outcome associated to it, then what's the point? So you've been able just to provide that. So thank you so much. It does portray what I seek to do, because at the end of the day, we are here on earth, and we have to make a difference. And some of us have chosen to be in the public space, and we are trusting that would add value to society, because that's why we get involved in all that we get involved into. So I thought, let me just start with those words. And once again, thank you so much, Prof. Pai, for the invitation to share my thoughts for today. And I'm trusting that I'll be able to leave some behind that can be useful for the society to take further. And as you rightly said, see how we can further develop this relationship between the society and the other organizations that I'm involved in here in South Africa. So thank you so much. Let me know if I need to fly to my presentation, then I can kickstart.
Yeah, you want me to share it?
No, I will do it on my side.
Okay.
So if you then give me a go ahead, then I shall proceed.
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just put it on presentation mode. All right, let me know if you're good.
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. So my brief thought will mostly focus on the key of integration as to how do we master it within the asset management value chain. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, especially in the past 3 or 4 years now, because as it has been said, I've been part of the public service for over 20 years. And in the first few years, we are so passionate and we want to run and work and do things. But then as we get older, as your hair gets more grayer, you realize there are further things that are also equally important that we need to take care of, apart from just certain principles, which we don't take them lightly, which we still need to abide by the principles, by the governance, the regulations, the laws, and everything else. But there are certain aspects that have been neglected for generations, which we now need to ensure that we can get in order. And I will unpack that as I go along. But before I do proceed, I just want to touch on these two organizations. One was mentioned already, the SICFARO, Chartered Institute of Government Finance, Auditors and Risk Officers. This is a 95-year-old, this year or 96 years old, whereby we've been catering for government finance officers, auditors, the risk officers, as well as performance officers. So they are members of this well-established organization. And as it has been said, I'm currently the sitting president of this organization here in South Africa. We also have other chapters in other African countries, and we are also hoping to actually build this further within our African continent so that we can be of value and benefit to other African countries. And then I established the Center for Municipal Asset Management about 8 to 10 years ago here in South Africa, after I had some interactions with the Canadian Network of Asset Managers, CNAM, they are called. I went to present a paper there. We struck a relationship. And then thereafter, I borrowed what they were doing in Canada, and I brought it back home here to say we need to do something similar, but obviously tailor-made and localized to South Africa. And hence then the formation of the Center for Municipal Asset Management. It has grown in leaps and bounds, and we have been doing quite good. Obviously, it's still a journey, And at some point in time, we will want to reach 100 years, just like other organizations that have been there. But what becomes important are what are the fundamental pillars and foundation that is there. And that is what we are trying to outlay at the present moment to make sure that this organization will continue for a foreseeable future as we then proceed. Just on the current landscape of South Africa, so that you can have an understanding of what we are all about. Our population is about 60 million, a kind of drop in the ocean when you compare to India. But obviously, as you understand, South Africa has a lot of dynamics, and I'm sure most of you will also know that in South Africa, we used to have the largest population of Indian descent in South Africa, but obviously over the years, that landscape has also changed. Within this 60 odd million, the government setup of how it should then govern the country is divided into three, where we've got our national, provincial, which I think in your case, it's more of the states. We've got 9 provinces, and then we've got 257 municipalities, which is local government. So we've got national government, provincial government, as well as municipalities. And these municipalities are categorized in cities, districts, as well as local municipalities, locals being predominantly your rural municipalities, and the cities being obviously your urban, mostly urban municipalities. And the asset base for that is the responsibility of these 3 spheres, like what I've projected here. You've got your national being in charge of your highways, your bridges, your airport, water, electricity from a bulk point of view, and the hospitals. And then the government is mostly dealing with clinics, education, buildings, and so on and so forth. And then on the latter part of municipalities, it's the reticulation of the water, the electricity, the roads, and everything else that is there. So that is how these have been broken up in terms of the infrastructure outlay and the management thereof between the 3 spheres of government in South Africa. Just on the bottom of your screens, the study that was undertaken by the World Bank, it has been projected that we need in 8 years about 4.8 to 6.2 trillion of rands, that is, which comes to about 329 billion in US dollars. And obviously, for those who understand the rupees and the rand, I think we're about 4 rupees to a rand. I stand corrected roundabout in there, so you can do the mathematics in terms of the conversion from these figures. And for water alone, we need about 250 billion worth of addressing our infrastructure. And most of this infrastructure that is being looked at here, because in South Africa, the biggest problem that we have is that we still have a lot of unserviced areas. Now, we have serviced areas, meaning there is infrastructure, there is service delivery of water, electricity, but then there are other areas that do not have some of these services. So now, with these monies that are being spoken of here, of 250 billion and all these issues that are at hand, but this is actually not enough to address the holistic picture of what South Africa is actually faced with. And those are studies that are currently being undertaken. And we have obviously, from an asset management point of view, been driving that so that we can then know how to prioritize now between the existing infrastructure in terms of management, maintenance, operations, the upgrades, refurbishments, and so on and so forth, vis-a-vis the infrastructure outlay for those areas that obviously do not have infrastructure or services as yet. So that is where we are as the country of South Africa. Now, also here in South Africa, mostly we have been looking at asset management from an accounting point of view. I'm currently speaking to your good selves. I'm quite sure that you are mostly from the engineering background. And we know that predominantly asset management in its entirety from an infrastructure, everybody seems to view it as it's an engineering discipline. Yes, there are major components of it when you're talking about infrastructure, but there is many facets to this than just a one-dimensional approach. So in South Africa, how asset management came about, when it was introduced via an accounting standard, which we call a generally recognized accounting practice, standard number 17. So we call it GRAP 17. So when it was introduced, then everybody viewed asset management as having to comply with an accounting standard. So even the structures in municipalities were geared towards locating asset management functions within the office of the Chief Finance Officer, the CFO. Now, obviously, whatever duties and functions that will be undertaken will be talking to an accounting function. And everything else related to engineering, proper planning, and everything else then was neglected. But everything just boxed to asset accounting, which is what I term ticking the box of compliance. And furthermore, within our municipalities, I've put in these three dots here to outline these three spheres of government that are working. We have all of them because of the many problems that we have in South Africa now. Our infrastructure has deteriorated because of that main challenge that I mentioned earlier of having huge backlogs. Obviously, for those who understand the history of South Africa, the disparities, the apartheid that took place, which segregated people, and obviously there are certain areas that had services because it was catering for the privileged, and then the underprivileged did not have services, which is the majority of the country. So over the years now, that is what the government is trying to address and redress. So now that balance then becomes quite crucial because those who have want to retain what they have, and those who don't have want to have what they don't have. So now that is where they need to strike the balance. Then it has created this problem where on the ground in municipalities, because there's a lot of challenges in asset management, where there is frequent disruption of services, there are potholes on the roads, water disruptions and interruptions, because there's not enough funds to manage assets, as well as because it is mainly viewed from an accounting point of view then the actual management of the asset, the life cycle management of asset, which is not being practiced because there is no personnel that is purely dealing with the life cycle management of infrastructure. So everybody sees a problem and everyone wants to jump in, and that is also creating chaos and confusion on the ground, which is then why the Center for Municipal Asset Management was then established to say, no, let's put some order into this problem, because everybody, if I can use this bad word, poking their nose into local government because they want to solve a problem. But if everybody jumps into the situation without understanding the problem, then we're actually creating a bigger problem. So that is where we are as South Africa. And this problem as well, we have seen it emerge, or has emerged even in other countries, especially within our African continent, because as I said, some of our challenges mostly are similar, but obviously South Africa is much better than most of the African countries. As you know, our economy and all of that is quite okay. So we are faced with silo operations and mentality in terms of how we do things. Departments in municipalities, departments in government organizations, they all think about what they need to do, but not within the holistic value chain point of view, where we then obviously need to ensure that there is cooperation and working together. But that silo mentality and operations is still much there. Then the last part is the issue of our leadership, our councillors, very, very much challenged with regards to that, because most of our councillors that are elected, which makes up our council, the leadership of our municipality, are individuals that are voted in. I'm sure you'll all understand that particular system. And most of these councillors that are being voted in have no academic background. Most of them are not educated at all, or some of them may have been teachers and nurses, that because they've got some form of understanding of an organization, then they will be put in as councillors. But then they are given a budget of 50 billion to manage infrastructure, worth 200 billion to be managed. They've got no idea what to do in terms of providing leadership. Yes, you've got administration that has to do the work, but that administration must obviously be held to account and obviously oversight provided. And that is where South Africa is lacking in that regard. And again, I can extrapolate this to other African countries. The same is also true. Then the solutions that we have come up with here, which because I know there are certain similarities between ourselves, South Africa and India, but yes, there are many other things that we are not. But I'm quite sure that from what we have come up with here can also be applicable to your good selves in India. First thing that we are still working on and have started working on is to unpack this asset management discipline. Where should we locate this asset management? Should it be within finance? Should it be within engineering? Should it be within GIS? Should it be with town planning? Where exactly should it be? And one thing that for us within the Center for Municipal Asset Management, with many other role players that we have, we are somehow now leaning towards this being a science on its own. Because if you unpack this, there is so much into it that you can actually come up with a science, especially in local government, with the complexities that pertains to local government. And here in South Africa, if it may not be taken in other countries, it's well and fine. But for us, we have actually termed this mamology, municipal asset management. And then obviously most disciplines that we have that ology. I'm sure you as academians, you'll understand where that comes from. We have looked into it. And then I said, we have termed it mamology going forward. And we want this discipline to obviously evolve and grow. And then we can come up with everything that is required to have it recognized within the country. One, from the academic point of view, because currently there's nothing much being done in the academic space when it comes to asset management. But obviously, once we develop the science, that is what we then want to. That's why when my bio was read earlier, I write a lot of books to ensure that we can obviously bridge the gap between theory and practice so that we can get this science of ours recognized. Then the other part is countrywide collaboration, because not one organization or one individual can tackle this problem that we are faced. We have to have everybody talking the same language, everybody understanding what are we faced with, what are we dealing with, because what we do now, what we do today, obviously will affect future generations. And if we put our foot wrong now, so obviously the impact of that, the future generation will obviously suffer if we then do not address some of these matters that we have actually picked up. Then we definitely need structured capacity building in place. It has to be there. When I mentioned I went to Canada a couple years ago, they were very, very big on capacity building. And their government, fortunately, they've got the means that actually put in a lot of funding towards capacity building, the training. There were programs that were taking place around that time because the government had funded capacity building initiative. But also, this capacity building must be structured, not just done for the sake of training people, but you're not training the right jockey for the horse, so to say. It has to be individuals that are being trained for what they are going to do, or to even add more, enhance their understanding, but what will be of value at the end, so that not millions of rupees, millions of rands, or millions of dollars can be spent, but come 5 years later or 10 years later, we are at the same spot, if not worse off, but so much of money has been spent on capacity building. So we are very, very much critical of that particular point. Then the last part is the formulation of the National Committee for Local Government Asset Management, because the main thing that we wanted to ensure is that there is buy-in from all the stakeholders, from all the role players in regards to municipal asset management. And I keep on referring to municipal asset management or local government asset management, but we understand that, as I said, we're not working in isolation to other spheres of government, and there is close working relationships with the other two spheres, which, as I said, we are national. In your case, I think it's the union, then our provinces, the states, and then our local government. And this is what we are then looking at moving forward as South Africa. And as said, some of these things obviously could be some lessons that can be taken. And also, as I need to get closer to rounding up for the sake of time, I'm going to touch on a few aspects now that talks to collaborations and how to obviously ensure that there can be these synergies and partnerships that can take place in ensuring that we are all working towards a common objective, common purpose that can then take our country forward. And importantly, since asset management is viewed in different dimensions, I've taken the stance of presenting something a bit different to what is common, because everybody who comes into the space, they know their story because of the discipline they come from, because of their technical understanding. I used to have my own technical understanding, as my background has been mostly finance, but I had to unlearn all of that. And I say, I need to press the delete button in my mind of some of the things that I thought asset management was, because I was viewing it mostly from an accounting perspective. Nothing wrong with the accounting perspective, but it cannot be in isolation to the engineering perspective, as well as ICT, GIS, and so on and so forth, that is part of this asset management fraternity. So then my stance has been, most people are looking at people from the asset management fraternity, others are looking at the systems, others are looking at processes, people, systems, processes, and various other things. But I said, there's something that underpins all of that, and some of these things we do not look into them. You may be in a university, maybe you may not even be in the public service, but one thing that I always say, when you talk municipal, when you talk local government, it touches each and every one. Where you are seated right now, whether it is in your home, you need water, you need electricity, you need to travel, the roads and everything else. So indirectly, you are touched. So now we have to make sure that collectively we get this right. But again, we can't have all the fingers in the cookie jar. Otherwise, there will be chaos, there will be disorder. So there has to be order that is in place to make sure that we can actually get this right. And one of the key things that I am very firm about, very passionate about nowadays, is this issue of integration. Because if we then don't find a way of integrating from a macro point of view, which is from a national point of view, as well as a micro, which refers to your local organization, be it a municipality, be it a state department, be it in a union or the national or federal government, how to ensure that there is integration within those departments, but also cross-cutting in all different departments and spheres of government. It is something that is very difficult to do, but I'm quite certain we ought to map it out and see and ensure how that will actually work. So we've got to look at what is the common vision, what are we aiming to do as a nation, as a department, as an organization, the purpose thereof, what strategies are there, what objectives are we seeking to achieve? Because in the absence of this understanding, then everyone will be pulling in different direction. Everyone will seem to be competing with one another. But there has to be a vision. Where are we going as a nation? In India, I know there's been a lot that has been happening in the past few years. I've been reading about in the past couple of weeks, just about the infrastructure outlay and more that wants your government to actually undertake in terms of providing more infrastructure for its citizens. But it's good to provide that infrastructure, but how we're going to manage it, I'm quite sure most of the speakers within your society have also been touching upon that particular point. Then the other part is deliberate collaboration. I should have removed this GAF teams because it was part of the what the government of Australia is trying to do, but it's something that you can also look at maybe as a reference, where you find out how do you collaborate as government within these three spheres, different layers, different levels that we actually have within our nation or country. And importantly, I'm very big on this. Let's not, compete with one another. There is so much of competition even within different spheres of government. One wants to shine. I know, yes, there are politics at play, But for most of us, I'm sure that are here, I'm not too sure, but we're not politicians. Let politicians compete and say all these nice things that they want to say and want to change people's perspective and narratives and what so forth. They can do all of those things and they fight. But sometimes when they fight, but when they go to, in their offices, back doors, they are smiling to one another. That's just how they operate. It's the science or of politics, political science, they call it. But for us as administrators, as bureaucrats, we have to make sure that we don't compete with one another, but we complement one another, we work with one another. We ensure that we need to realize what has been set before us that needs to be realized from a strategy, from a vision, and the purpose that has been outlaid in that respect. Because, as I said, we are all learned individuals. I'm also learned. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean because now I've got this degree or I've got this qualification, then I think I know it all. I don't know it all. But if we combine our minds, then we'll be able to achieve much more in that regard. So let's complement ourselves, and then we'll see how far we can actually go. Then the last part talks to how do we simplify our message? How do we effectively communicate this message? Because if you really look into the principles of asset management, there's so much jargon out there. Let's be honest. I'm sure most of you understand those principles from a life cycle point of view, everything that pertains to the mechanics of it, the operations, the maintenance, and all these big words that you can come up with when it comes to asset management. But how can we simplify it for the layman? How do we simplify it for our councillors, our political leaders out there? And how do we effectively communicate this within the organization so people can understand? Because everybody's using an asset in organization. We're currently using our laptops. If maybe that laptop might be your organization, universities, or from your employer, it's an asset that must be managed. The car that some people are using, the buildings that they are at, besides the infrastructure for the service delivery, but it starts even within the offices. Those are assets. How do we then simplify the message of ensuring that these assets are managed well? Not just tick the box of knowing how many assets we have, but will they last the useful life, the lifespan that it has actually been acquired to last, and ensure that we can derive the level of service that we all desire from that particular asset at obviously the minimum cost as much as possible. So obviously these are the terms that are being spoken about, and it's how then we simplify that message for people to then understand, oh, this is why we're talking asset management. Oh, if I take this to my own home, I've got a house, I need to maintain my house. If I need to add another room within my house, or it's an upgrade, an extension, then how do I ensure that it doesn't disrupt what is currently happening? It doesn't disrupt my foundation. Can I add a second level into my house? Will my structure be able to withstand it? Or maybe my house will end up collapsing. These are the simple things that we can start to communicate. And then you take this to large projects, large infrastructure projects, then they start to make more obviously technical sense. But for those who have to understand why we need to do this, simplify the message. All right, so I need to finish off. I borrowed these again from Australia. I said, let me just leave it here deliberately, because even with the Australians, I've put in here first world country challenges. They've got aging infrastructure. They've had all the monies in the world, but now the issue of the cost of living is rising in the first world countries. Things are not as easy as they are before. So now they've got to balance. For us, I opened up with our balance of not serviced areas vis-a-vis those that are serviced. We have got to balance. I come from an accounting background. I understand how to balance the budget. I have been a CFO and all of that. It's not an easy thing to do. Take it to a national level. Definitely, again, not an easy thing to do. So they've got challenges. You come to developing nations. Our challenge is mostly on how to manage what we have, the maintenance of existing infrastructure vis-a-vis the rural backlogs, the infrastructure backlogs. How to make sure that we strike that balance so that at the end, our citizens can be happy, because we need to service our citizens that we have as countries. And we can only service them with the assets base that we actually have currently, as well as future generations that we are to have. So in getting close to conclusion, because I'm being very mindful of time. I need to end so that if there's any questions, we can then touch upon. I've termed this quote, if you may call it, or a statement, so that going forward, others can unpack it. To those who are more learned and big in academia, you can unpack this much more. But I felt, let me just put it here so that we can find a way of how maybe I can simplify the message without adding too much technical jargon. So I'm basically putting it as the key to mastering this infrastructure integration. It all lies in all of us clearly understanding the set primary objective that is being pursued. Once we understand the primary objective, that vision, then we have got to follow up that with comprehensive planning. And it's good to plan, but we have also had to ensure that we timely complete all the tasks that have been set thereof. And then all of this then requires effective use of available resources, as well as seamless coordination and collaboration among all stakeholders that are involved. You may take this as something that is a simple statement. I can tell you it becomes very, very critical from a foundation point of view of what we need to do to ensure that future generations can also experience the services that we are getting right now, or else things can crumble. We can have infrastructure that is on the ground, but unfortunately no services, because we have seen that happening in other areas or countries as well. Then all of this that I've just mentioned here, the results of this is that it brings a culture change within an organization, within a nation, if it's embraced nationwide, that will ensure that this drives the provision, not just of services to communities, but quality services, as well as sustainable value for respective communities. Because if there is an area that does not have water, does not have electricity, does not have proper transportation systems, and the roads are not in good condition, who will want to invest in that particular area? Just from a simple question that I may pose. Because every business, they want to make sure that they can put up their monies and obviously recoup their monies from an investment point of view. But if the area cannot accommodate them, they'll basically take their investment somewhere else. And obviously then there will be no value to that particular community if there is no proper management of the asset. But it starts from here. Because if we don't have these proper foundations in place, whatever that we are doing, again, as I said earlier, come 10 years' time, we can be doing something, but we're not productive, and it will not yield us the results that we actually want at the end, which talks to these quality services, which talks to sustainable services, as well as sustainable value for our citizens and the communities out there. In closing, this statement, I will not leave without mentioning it. That is my motto. As I was introduced, for those who might be in public service, in academia, I can tell you it does work, and it's what I live by, that when you serve people wholeheartedly, they will elevate you to serve more people. It's a no-brainer. You don't ask for positions. I am in that level now because I've poured myself to serve humanity in terms of my area of expertise and passion, which is asset management. And once again, as I've said, then I'm always offered this position, offered that position, so that we can continue to spread this good news of ours that is required for our humanity. And then lastly, all of us here are leaders. I am glad that when I saw some of the screens, it's more matured individual. I won't say old, it's matured individuals, meaning that we are leaders in our own rights. And now remember, as you go on with your works of asset management, academic work, wherever that you are, as a leader, because we need to ensure that we can serve humanity. Now, public leadership, public leader will be remembered for the impact that is made to society, the improvements that you'll bring in, as well as workable and progressive vision that you can lay out for future generations. And these are some of the quotes that I've been putting over the years. I will just jot down if I get these thoughts, and I felt that I can also just share it with your good selves, because I do trust when we all go to be with our Creator, we want to know that we have done something good for fellow citizens, fellow humanity that is amongst us, as well as our countries, that our countries can also better improve and, you know, be globally competitive in many areas, and which I do believe, especially us as developing countries, we can do it. It's going to be a journey. They can attack us, this and that. I'm sure we might be hearing about South Africa and the USA and what so forth. Obviously, there are underpinning issues there. We want to go into them. But at the end of the day, we are who we are and will continue to be who we are, but ensuring that for future generations, we take good care of them and we can be in a position of being a better society at the end. With those words, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. And I can take, if there are any questions, then I will take them. Over to you, Prof. Pai.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Emmanuel, for that excellent presentation, showing us how you are trying to improve the lives of common people in South Africa, working with the local governments. I think we need to learn from you. It's a 96-year-old organization that you are heading, and we've just started in India on asset management. In fact, the society, asset management society, India is just about 4 years young. I can't say old. So a lot of things to learn from you, especially with the local government. I like so many of the things you said. Uh, Especially you hit the nail on the head when you said, politicians. Uh, of course, democracy, everybody are treated equal. So one need not be educated to contest in an election and win the election. So they won't be knowing anything about technology, asset management, engineering, but still they can be counselors, and they decide most of the time what happens in the government. Well, that's I think democracy that that happens everywhere. It's not just maybe in South Africa. It's more in India as well. That we have to work with the politicians who come from different backgrounds. Some of them, don't have any education at all. The other thing uh, that you mentioned is about our own homes. I think very good point for all of us here. Asset management starts at your home. So how you're going to manage your uh, assets at home, and then have this extended to maybe the rest of the society. I think are very important points that you made. Now the question is about a couple of things, like how you have started interacting with the government. I know you were in a CFO position. We are trying to make inroads, or trying to get some of the government people understand what asset management is. But how is that you made inroads into the government is one question. And second is about the collaboration that you have talked about. Yes, we shouldn't be competing with each other. We should be learning from each other in a collaborative setup. So obviously, we have a lot of things to learn from you, because what I see is that you are already working with some of the government entities. So can you just tell us how we can go about doing this?
No, it's a good question, Prof. Pai, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can learn from us. Just like as I've said, I've borrowed from the Canadians. I borrowed the concept because obviously Canada is more well advanced, first world country, and the challenges they have in asset management are much different to here in South Africa. So that was the first thing I did, because I was also trying to see how can I accelerate this improvement in our asset management practices. So what is happening around the world that we can borrow from. And then I borrowed the concept of establishing a body, which is the Center for Municipal Asset Management, because within the SIGFARO, the Chartered Government Finance Officers, we couldn't use that vehicle or that organization, mainly because, remember, you want buy-in from everyone. Now, if you come to the engineers and I say, I am Dr. Emmanuel Ngobo, and I represent the Chartered Institute of Government Finance Officers and Auditors. So obviously, our discussions, as soon as I start, they'll be thinking, what is this finance officer going to tell us? Because that's this perspective. And that is the departure point that everybody, it's human nature. Psychologically, that's how it is. You know, people view you by what they think. And obviously, then you can't work further from there. It's going to be difficult. So I said, then the best way is to formulate and have an organization, a society, just like you have, which is good. It's a good start, because asset management, then you can go to finance, the accounting, you can go to engineers, and so on and so forth. And then you can present the concept of asset management. Now, it has not been easy, though, as much as we've got the asset management organization, because remember, everybody has been comfortable with how they've been doing things. They've got their set key performance areas. They've got their set strategies. And then you come and you say to them, it looks like what you've been doing is not working. Obviously, you can't say that, and that in an attacking manner. We have got to be in a very professional, very respectful manner. And remember, it is a journey. For us, as I've said, that the center has been around now for about 8 to 10 years. And it has not been an easy journey for it to even be accepted in terms of what we are talking about, because people are stuck in the old ways. But we've been performing asset management. The auditor will come and say things are okay in terms of our books, because we've been ticking the box of the accounting standards, ticking some of the box of compliance. But the question then becomes, then why are the communities not getting water? Why are there frequent disruptions in services? It means you're not managing your infrastructure. If you knew when something was going to break, you would have fixed it. Proactive maintenance comes in. What are your proactive maintenance schedule? Can you show me those things? They are not there because nobody has been looking at asset management holistically. So then that buy-in becomes important. How you present your message, how you come in there, and you don't want to be seen as the person who knows it all, but you are coming in there to present a solution that everyone can work with. Because then you'll be viewed as you are coming to compete. You're coming to be this know-it-all organization, but no, you are coming to add value. And you obviously want to ensure as you add value, you can integrate all these different actions, all these different disciplines that pertain to asset management into gearing us to provide the services. Then you, as you have rightly said, in the past years, we've been knocking on all government doors. And it again, I reiterate, it has not been easy. And it is still a journey that we are undertaking. But we are fortunate. We have now gotten some buy-in, some understanding in some of the government departments, and others are even working with us now. Just next week, we've got a conference that is upcoming. And, we now even have a chief director, one of the senior officials within the National Treasury that will actually be part of that conference, because he wants us now to start looking at how can we work together. But as I've said, it has taken us 8 years to knock on the door and for them to give us the buy-in that we actually require. So, cut the long story short, just ensure that when you present what needs to be done, present it professionally, present it in a respectful manner. Don't try to be the know-it-all. Don't try to come above everybody. Try and work with everyone. Present that message. We want this to work. And then make sure that you don't have unrealistic expectations that in 3 years' time, we are going to change things around. It's not going to happen. There is change management requires. People have been comfortable doing the same thing all over, the SALT approach, same as the last time, and they're comfortable. But then how do you ensure that you progressively work them out of that and you present a picture, the benefits that will then help the society at large, not just your organization. You may want to advance your organization, well and good, but it will advance as you advance the cause that you've been established for. And that is the key.
Yeah, any other questions, Gopi? I think you sent a question in the chat.
Just 1 minute. Yes. Well, thank you very much. I think that's a great initiative. Now, can you look into that? There are the different elements in the different government sector and the different assets. At the same time, it is people who drive that one. And for building the capability of people, mainly in the education sector, they need to put that in their curriculum, starting from the accounting one for the strategic asset management area and to the maintenance, reliability, availability, safety, security, sustainability from the engineering and the IT also, because they are the IT related to systems and all other systems need to align. How that is happening? Because main thing is that there are the professional bodies, those who look after some of the professionals. Universities, they need to talk to each other and also start doing their bit. Government can play a role because the local government, they can tell, okay, our asset management systems must be aligned with the ISO 55000 one, and we need to look into the accounting, this standard so that all these municipalities, they can fall together and then have to demonstrate that they're practicing. So that is one thing. How that to happen? Because major issue is that industries, they might drive, but in the public sector, sometimes there is a complacency everywhere. And second thing is that the life of the politicians are 3 years to 5 years, and sometimes getting the vote is the more important compared to what is happening with the quality of the assets and in terms of the OPEX CAPEX balancing. So can you please share, because what I'm telling, I have spent all my life in this area, and fortunately from the maintenance engineering society and also the asset management council, and also I was part of the IPWA in Australia and New Zealand. They're trying to do that one. How? Because I think South Africa has a really very good, opportunity to work together. The collaboration you are talking about and the cooperation, and that can make it work. So can you share? Because always, it's not easy. Whatever you have told, that is fine. It may be from some of the organization's perspective, but when that has to go in terms of the private sector, public sector, and in terms of all this infrastructure, because you have lots of tourism areas also, and the natural assets, because I'm pushing the boundary, and thank you that you also mentioned about this God, and we are pushing here, not only in Australia, but also in India, the physical assets, natural assets, and we are talking about the spiritual asset also, which helps in terms of the service, what we are talking about. Can we share? Because that is very interesting topic. And since you are in the middle, how, if people are approaching, and how it can be collaboration with the South Africa and Australia. I know even Australia is there in this one. We work together and to make a difference, because if it is sustained, it's reliable, cost effective, and it saves people's life, less accidents. That is where our knowledge and living worth. What you are telling, that is the same thing. All these people in this, they talk about, but can you please share? Because I'm also visiting professor for the Johannesburg, and I contribute to the engineering management for the rail sectors and others PhD supervision. But still, in the university sector, that is not happening. And if it does not happen, always we are missing out. So how you can share that, what is happening there, and how we can do that same thing. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kopa. I'm glad that I've triggered some good thoughts within this discussion of ours, because what the question that you were posing is basically what we all need to answer, because what we also need to ask ourselves is, there's been so much that has been happening. The Institute of Asset Management has been there for over 40 years, plus minus, and many others. But we come in 2025, and we're still grappling with issues of asset management as to how we're going to do this, different types of assets and this and that, rightly so. I'm glad you've outlined them well, including natural assets, because an asset is an asset. Now, the reason why on our side we have taken a step back and said, no. Let's look at the medical fraternity, the doctors. The doctors, they belong to one body, profession, and then others, they will start to specialize in others, not profession, specialize in different sectors, but they still are doctors in the medical fraternity when they start up. Now, it does not mean that a doctor that is an optometrist dealing with the eyes is not a doctor. But initially, they would have studied to be a doctor, go through the qualification, go through the training, and then thereafter, this doctor realized, no, what, hey, I've got a passion for eyes, so I want to do more research for the eyes. So let me go for that profession, if I can put it that way. Then it's if we take and borrow from that medical fraternity, and then assets that we have, especially in the public sector, you can even add the private. They are there to service humanity, to provide services. So those are systems that, just like you have in a body system, it's more or less the same thing if you take the connotation of it. Now, the problem that we are looking at is that it has not been developed as a science for it to be then understood that there has to be a base that you are all working from. Then from the base, then we can start to work from there, the different specialization of assets that we have, be it from the mechanic, the infrastructure, be it the natural, be it the fleet, because fleet is also an asset, the vehicles and everything. There's so many of them. But what is the baseline of asset management? Because the principles that govern asset management are similar from a foundation point of view. Exactly what you're talking about of efficiency, effectiveness, the cost issues, all of those grounding. If we say we want to develop asset managers for the future, who are we going to develop? Who is it? Who is that individual? Then if we have not answered that question, then how are we looking into the future? Then what happens is that people stumble on asset management. Professionals stumble on asset management. They do other things. Then they get into understanding, or they get involved in some form of managing asset. Oh, now I'm an asset manager. No. How can we develop credible, competent asset managers for the future? It starts from the bottom. As you've rightly said, including academia. Right now in academia, everything is disintegrated when it comes to asset management. Everybody is doing his or her own thing, if I can put it in that way. Finance is doing asset accounting. Engineering is doing asset engineering. There's no commonality. And we need to bring that commonality. It can go into the different qualifications. There could be modules that are actually in there to bring in asset management, the values, the principles, what the fundamentals of what is asset management that we are actually doing. And then those who want to specialize further in it, they can continue from there, because that is what we're actually aiming. And as I've been saying, we haven't found the way, but that is the way that we are, that is our trajectory that we are going towards. Because as I've said, we have studied what has been happening around it. We're saying, is it working? And to some extent, yes. But there is still a missing link as to how do you bring all of this together, especially from a futuristic looking point of view. And the last point I will say is what we're talking about. There are so many organizations out there, and they end up doing their own things in their own corners. The light is lighting up, yes, in that corner. The engineers, the IPWAs, the IAMs, and everybody else, the global forums, and so on. It's well and good. But how are we uniting to one common objective of what we want to undertake, especially from an educational point of view, as well as understanding that not all countries are similar. They are first world countries, they're developing countries. Then how do we tailor make all of that, but within the principles of true asset management? And that is where we then need to start working together. Nobody knows it all. but how do we make sure that there is a center that holds, not my center, the CMM, definitely not, but the center of common purpose, common objective of saying in 20 years to come, who are these asset managers, asset officers that we are going to produce? And that's the question we need to answer, because once we have competent individuals, then they can take it further beyond our time. We won't be around in 30 years or so, but who will take this thing further and ensure that we can realize proper asset management in all of these different things, adding politics and what so forth. So that will be my short answer. But again, that's why I'm saying I'm glad we have started this discussion. It's a discussion that can take us a whole day, but I'm glad that these thoughts are now in your mind as to how do we take this further. Thank you so much, sir.
No, I think that is great, because what you are showing some light that if from the government level, all this public sector, they can mandate related to, okay, you must have this, documented system related to asset management, and also your IT systems should be aligned, and strategic asset management plan and asset management, at least this baseline, and dictating in terms of the curriculum that universities need to, demonstrate that how they're embracing that in their curriculum and also in the infrastructure. So if that happens, because at least you are coming from the government finance, because I'm telling that the power is with the finance and those, but sometimes, their objectives, I need only one line in terms of the asset, in terms of, whatever is the depreciation, I'm interested, but the engineers that need to get the details, that is a different story. But it is very encouraging. Thank you very much. And hopefully you can share and take it back that you are in a better position, that how from the government level in the public sector, they can mandate that one, and they can also, influence universities to do that, along with the support from the professional bodies. That is what we are trying to do, but always there are the different challenges for different countries and different cultures. But your talk is definitely inspiring. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, sir. And if you, Prof. Pai, I'm so sorry. I know we are out of time.
Yeah,
I just noticed that we've got Ashay here, my good friend from Australia as well. If you don't, he's online. Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Ashay, for joining. He's gonna be with us in South Africa next week, because I said we've got the conference coming up. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Ashay, as well, for joining here.
Sorry, I am online, but I'm on my way to the airport to come and see you, Dr. Emmanuel. So,
Great.
So I've got my camera off, yeah. But we are presenting a masterclass in Durban next week on prioritizing and bringing that CapEx, OpEx together. So thank you. It's terrific.
No, thank you, sir. How about you, Prof? Sorry, I just wanted to show that we are together.
Yeah, no, I know. Professor Patak had a question. I think we need to.
Just I had a quickly two questions I had. One is how comprehensive indicator for efficient asset management. What is your indicator for efficiency of asset management? And number two, do you have an inventory of products and services which are being used for asset management from the startup market?
Can you just repeat the second one, sir? The second question?
The second one is because now the startup ecosystems have developed in the developed country as well as in the developing countries. Now, in the asset management arena, what are the products and services now are being used by the professionals or by the government or by the industry? So that means the Asset Management Society of India, we look forward to having a comprehensive indicator for efficient asset management. And number two, we need to get our products and services will be maybe IT services, that which exactly would be helping our asset management. So now in your applications, have you used any third-party products or instruments or softwares that is which is adapted to your asset management system?
So here in South Africa, what has been happening, as I said, because our lens of asset management has been purely based on compliance with the legislative framework. the accounting standards that we have, as many other legislative prerogatives that we need to adhere to. One of them is called the Municipal Finance Management Act, that we have to ensure that we adhere to that particular act of parliament. So every year, then the Auditor General will come and audit municipalities, whether are we complying with that, as well as those accounting standards I was referring to. So that was then our departure point, or has been our departure point for a number of years, because the Auditor General will come and then they will have a whole list of findings to say a municipality has 10 findings on asset management. They did not record their asset on time. They did not depreciate their assets. They did not do what is called impairments in their books, which is bringing your assets.
Telling about the financial asset management. We do also have the financial asset management in terms of with our internal audits and also with the CAG. And we have got a mechanism of compliance and systems and a particular ledgers and the accounting systems, bookkeeping, we follow it. But our main concern is particularly with the physical asset management and the mapping of our financial assets and the physical assets as so far to my knowledge is not in a standardized format. There are few our indicators in the financial asset indicators in terms of the ratios. That is a different one, but that also not particularly evaluated for as a financial asset, rather as a financial performance. Now, do you have in our physical asset management scenario any comprehensive indicator?
Yeah. So I can quickly jump in, Dr. Emmanuel, on that comprehensive indicator, because it's something we've spoken for years. And Mr. Pathak, so there are in the International Infrastructure Management Manual and also in the IPWEA Asset Management Framework. To give you simple examples, from an accounting perspective, the depreciation is seen as an indicator of the future economic benefit being consumed, as an example, which is purely the replacement cost divided by the life. Then there are more engineering-based indicators that are now coming in. For example, in Australia and also now adopted in the United States with the Government Finance Officers Association are indicators like the health of the portfolio. For example, we want to make sure as a city that we want to keep our stormwater drainage, our rail, our roads, our buildings no worse than a 65 to 70% health. And that's an Australian number. And what that means is, as an average, our infrastructure has got 70% remaining life out of a 60 to 100-year asset. Then there is also a ratio called the backlog ratio, which is the amount of capital work that is likely to be required over the next 10 years divided by the total replacement cost of the asset. And to make sure that that number doesn't increase 15 to 20%. And then finally, there is also a sustainability ratio, which is the amount of money required as per the asset management plan divided by the amount of funding that is available from all the sources of revenue. So when you combine those indicators, it gives you a red, yellow, green kind of indicator on how the assets are performing and brings that accounting and engineering together, like Dr. Nagobo said before. It is about those collaborations. And one of the things that Dr. Nagobo and I have kind of discussed from the education perspective is, if we were to have, for example, an elective course in strategic asset management for the public sector, why not pair up the students from finance and engineering? So you got one student from finance and one student for engineering in the pair doing the assignments together. So we build that relationship at that academic level before the young generation finds their way into the mainstream. And just one last one, Mr. Pathak, in terms of technology and software. Yes, South Africa has got a number of enterprise asset management systems. I've got the privilege of co-speaking with one of those at the masterclass next week. Australia has also got 4 or 5 really great enterprise asset management systems like Technology One, Infor, Conquest, and the like. And there are a number of strategic asset management software systems that also do scenario planning over 10, 20 years to work out the long-term financial plan and calculate those metrics that I just mentioned, like depreciation, sustainability ratio, backlog ratio, and the asset health. So it's a pretty mature market. It's just a case of joining the dots.
Thank you. That's a very good comprehensive answers. Exactly, we would be very interested to get that identification of the critical assets. Under that, it will be very good. We'll be very happy that sometimes our collaborative work can go in that.
Absolutely. And Dr. Nagobo and I can do a joint session in the next couple of months in terms of explaining because the regulation in South Africa, there is no shortage of legislation. There's plenty of legislation in asset management. It's just being used as a tick box. But I think there's a lot.
Implementation plan. Exactly, that is the most important. That is in the implementation plan, the first thing comes as the identification of the critical asset. So in that way, though we do LCA as a tool, sometimes we use, and then this remaining life assessment, which is also, that is though the standardization has got few issues still to be resolved.
The standardization internationally is available, and like Dr. Nagobo said, there is no need to reinvent the wheel.
That's true.
I would be more than delighted with Dr. Nagobo to present each one of those metrics and show you thousands of examples around the world where cities and state governments have successfully deployed it to either gain additional funding or set rates and taxes or engage politicians in deliberative engagement about balancing the budget. It's completely doable, and I think it needs thought leaders like those on the screen.
Very good, Dr. Prabhu. It is exactly, we look forward to that the tailor making of those standards and all that into specific areas, problem areas.
And same as CMAM in South Africa, like Dr. Nagobo said, it's taken 8 years to get to where they are. The Institute of Public Works Engineering has taken 32 years to get where it is in Australia. Similar with Asset Management Council, similar with the Government Finance Officers Association. It's a long road and it takes small steps, but it is possible.
Very good point.
I fully agree. What you mentioned.
There's a lot of expectation from AMSI in 3-4 years. So,
related to not inventing the wheel, that is a great suggestion, because in the public sector in Australia, IPWA, in all this infrastructure and the industries, the Asset Management Council, they look into that. There are so many enterprise softwares in addition to what you have mentioned. Even this Ellipse is there, even SAP and also IBM, they have that in the enterprise level. Then there are so many CMMS. We need not to look into that. Fundamental thing, what I want to tell, that starting point should be the documented system. Starting point, there should be some information system. You must understand what is the condition of the asset, because even facilities management, they have that, the guideline related to whatever is building by building, element by element, all these things are there. We need to get those things in the academia. We need to make sure at least related to public sector assets, those are the money from the citizens and the taxpayers. Those are well utilized in terms of balancing those things, and what Asay has talked about in terms of the backlogs and how much percentage you need to look into based on the depreciation. There should be some risk-informed decision making. So thank you very much for explaining that one, and I really encourage Ashay and Dr. Emmanuel that listen. Let's talk and collaborate so that learning from each other, that makes the world a better place. And Professor Pai is always trying to pull together, and he's wagging his head to put the message to the government level in India. Thank you very much for that. And I think there is a need. If that happens in South Africa, that can tell that, listen, this is one, if that comes from the central government to these the state governments and at least public sector areas to start with, that would be a big help to the Indian industries infrastructure, and it will give a big tick to the Asset Management Society India. So thanks you all. Back to you, Professor Pai.
Yeah, thank you all. I think we've overshot our time by some 15-18 minutes. I now request Dr. Binu to conclude with a vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. As we conclude this insightful session on mastering the key of integration in municipal asset management, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Emmanuel Nagobo for sharing his valuable insights. His expertise and practical examples have given us a deeper understanding of effective municipal asset management and strategic integration. Thank you, sir. A special thanks to Colonel Sunil Yadav for introducing our speaker and setting the stage for today's discussions. I also thank our president, Dr. Raghuveer Pai, for organizing this valuable knowledge sharing session. Finally, my appreciation to all the participants for your engagement. Your enthusiasm makes these sessions meaningful. I look forward to more such discussions in the future. Thank you. I wish you all a great day ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Binu, for the vote of thanks, and thank you all. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
People and God bless. Bye.
Bye-bye.